Where the Silence Ends, a journey through betrayal, departure, and the quiet rebirth of a woman who chose herself over the echoes of a loveless home. There was a time when I thought silence meant peace. That stillness inside a home was something to be proud of, evidence that nothing was wrong. I used to take comfort in the way our house never echoed with shouting, never cracked from raised voices or broken dishes. It felt mature, grown up. But later I realized silence can also mean distance, or worse, avoidance. The house we lived in sat at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, the kind where the wind could pass through a row of trees and you'd hear it long before a car drove by. White walls, stone steps, and a small garden I tried to keep alive. There were lilies on the porch when we moved in. My husband said he liked them. I planted more every spring, even though they rarely made it past summer. Still, I tried. We had been married nearly 7 years by then. It sounds like a long time when you say it out loud, but it felt shorter in memory, like a chapter that never quite turned the way it was supposed to. I didn't notice the shift immediately. There was no single day that shattered everything. It was more like a slow pulling away, like watching something drift farther out to sea, too gradually for alarm, until one day you blink and it's gone. He came home later. He answered questions with vague nods. His smile, once easy and full of little boy mischief, became something polite and hard-earned. Our conversations shrank to logistical check-ins. Did you pay the gas bill? Are we out of milk? Some nights we ate dinner without exchanging more than 5 sentences. The television filled the silence with background noise, but I stopped pretending I didn't notice. He stopped pretending anything was wrong. Then came the morning everything shifted, though not in a loud or cinematic way. He had already left for work. I was tidying up, trying to impose some kind of order on the day. That's when I found the blue cotton shirt, the one he wore too often. It was draped over the back of a chair. I picked it up to toss it into the laundry, and there it was, a lipstick stain on the collar. Not bold red, not even the coral I used to wear on weekends. This was a soft, dusty rose. Gentle, careful, almost invisible. I didn't react right away. I stood there, the fabric in my hands, staring like it might change under my gaze. My hands didn't shake, my breath didn't hitch. I didn't feel anger, just stillness, heavy and suffocating. And my first instinct wasn't to confront him. It was to wash the shirt. That's what terrified me most. The ease with which I tucked away the evidence, folding denial into routine, like it had always been part of the plan. After that, I began to see the pieces of a puzzle I hadn't wanted to assemble. A trace of perfume on his jacket was too floral to be mine. Receipts from cafes we never visited together. Short phone calls that always ended when I walked into the room. But he kept showing up for dinner. He still asked if I needed anything when he went to the store. He stayed just long enough to keep the lie alive. There was a woman who lived upstairs, our tenant, a piano teacher. She kept to herself, paid rent early, and left no trail of drama in her wake. I passed her once in the hallway and noticed her lipstick had the same careful hue. Later, I caught the scent of her perfume, that same lingering trail I found on his scarf. I didn't need to confirm anything. I didn't want to. I started watching not to catch them, but to understand my role in it all. She left every Tuesday around the time he began working late, came back with neatly packed groceries. I noticed she bought fresh herbs, the kind he liked with his pasta. Once I saw her humming while watering her potted violets. Her expression wasn't guilty. If anything, it was tiring, maybe even resigned. And the strange part is, I didn't hate her. What I felt wasn't rage or bitterness. It was a detachment. As though we were both passengers on the same sinking ship, but in different cabins, watching the water rise through different cracks. I wondered what she saw in him, if she knew how he retreated before he ran, if she believed she was the one he'd stay for. I stopped trying so hard to be the woman I used to be, the one who made sure the floor shone and the sheets smelled like lavender. Dust gathered in corners, the sink stayed cluttered with dishes. The lilies outside turned brown by mid-June, and I didn't replace them. It felt symbolic. Honest. The attic became a sanctuary. I climbed those creaky stairs more often, not even sure what I was looking for. It held memories of the life we were supposed to build. Our wedding album, filled with photos I could barely look at. A camcorder with recordings from a trip to Jinhae, where cherry blossoms fell like confetti on our heads. I watched it once. I laughed in that video. Really laughed. But I couldn't remember why. He never asked where I spent my time. Never followed. We lived together, but it no longer felt like coexistence. It felt like cohabitation with a ghost only I was the one drifting through. I began thinking about leaving long before I actually did. Not out of fury. There was no dramatic betrayal scene. It was emptier than that. It was the quiet realization that I didn't belong not in that house, not in that marriage, and not in the life I had so carefully crafted around him. I was fading, losing color like a photograph in the sun. I packed slowly so he wouldn't notice, one bag at a time. I didn't leave a note, I didn't take the matching plates or the framed travel maps. I left the ring in a drawer beside his watch. But I took the cherry blossom photo from Jinhae. I took a sweater that still smelled like hope. And I took the cat, the one who started lingering on our porch at dusk. She used to feed it scraps sometimes. Maybe that's why it came back. Maybe we both needed somewhere new to belong. I moved to a coastal town, not glamorous, cracked walls, a heater that whined in the middle of the night, but the sea was close. I could hear it breathing through the windows. That was enough. The days bled into each other like watercolor left out in the rain. There was no routine at first, no alarm clocks or calendars, no need to time anything beyond the setting sun. The sea was always there, constant and forgiving, its rhythm gentler than the breath I once held in my old life. I walked often, sometimes for hours, until the soles of my shoes grew thin and my thoughts grew quiet. In the beginning, the silence felt too wide, too empty. I didn't miss him. I missed the version of me who once believed in permanence, that girl who planted lilies year after year, thinking maybe this time they'd bloom. I mourned her in quiet ways, folding her favorite cardigan, painting the sea in clumsy brushstrokes, and watching the steam rise from tea I never drank. Grief arrived as expected, but not as I imagined. It wasn't sharp or explosive. It was dull, steady, a companion who unpacked beside me and decided to stay. The cat adjusted faster than I did. She roamed the windowsills like she'd always belonged there, occasionally leaving paw prints on the canvas I forgot to clean. She liked the corner of the couch where the morning sun pooled, and sometimes I envied how easily she napped through everything. She never asked questions, never looked for explanations. Eventually, the apartment became mine in subtle ways. The broken heater was fixed by a man who didn't make small talk. I painted one of the walls a shade of green that reminded me of pine forests. I started baking, failing most of the time, but the smell lingered and made the space feel lived in. I bought secondhand books without caring if I finished them. I let the windows stay open on stormy nights, listening to the rain hammer the rooftop like a language I was finally learning to speak. There were no sudden revelations, no tidy conclusions. Healing was slow, like winter thawing into spring, then forgetting to stay warm. I stopped checking my phone for messages that never came. Stopped wondering what they were doing, whether they ever felt the weight of what they'd broken. Over time, they became less real, like people from a past life I had only dreamed. I found work in a bookstore that didn't mind my silences. The owner liked old jazz records and forgot to alphabetize anything. Customers drifted in and out, some chatty, some quiet. No one knew my story. I didn't volunteer. It felt good to be a stranger to exist without the shadow of what I'd survived. I arranged books by color instead of title, pressed dried flowers into the margins of forgotten paperbacks, started writing on the backs of receipts when a feeling didn't fit anywhere else. On rare days, a memory would knock gently, a vacation photo, a burnt dinner, a moment in the attic holding letters that once felt like anchors. I let them in, then let them go. Not all ghosts demand exorcism. Some just want a place to rest. I never saw him again. Never checked. I imagined he moved on with practiced ease, like slipping into a new coat already broken in. Perhaps they tried to recreate what we had, mistaking routine for intimacy. Perhaps she learned too late the truth behind his quiet. Or maybe they found their version of happy, tangled in secrets, but comfortable. It didn't matter anymore. Not to me. The lilies came back into my life, unexpectedly. A neighbor left a basket of them by my door one morning. No note, just the fragrance and the memory it stirred. I almost didn't take them inside. But I did. I placed them in a chipped vase by the window, and they lasted longer than they ever had before. There was no grand transformation, no rebirth under fireworks. Just small, persistent choices. Waking up, stretching, letting the day unfold without planning its every minute. I started painting again, not to capture anything perfect, but to see how colors moved across canvas. The sea became a constant subject. So did the cliffs, the horizon just before dusk, and the loneliness in a seagull's flight. On one of my walks, I came across a child building a tower of stones near the shore. Her mother watched from a distance, content to let the structure collapse again and again. It struck me then that not everything broken demands fixing. Sometimes it just needs space to fall and rise again, reshaped by time and tenderness. I didn't seek out new love. Not because I feared it, but because I no longer defined myself by its absence. If it came, it would be welcome, but I no longer built rooms inside me waiting for someone else to fill them. One day, I opened a box I had left sealed since moving. It held remnants of a life I barely recognized. Receipts from a trip to Jeju, a birthday card with rushed handwriting, a scrap of paper with a recipe we never got around to trying. I kept the cherry blossom photo. The rest, I let go, some to the trash, some to the sea. I stood by the water's edge for a long time, holding the last of those items, a pressed flower, pale and fragile. I didn't throw it. I simply let the wind take it. Not as a ritual, not as a goodbye, just as an offering, to time, to memory, to everything I used to believe. The coastal town never asked who I had been. It simply welcomed who I had become. In its quiet mornings, in the soft echo of waves brushing the rocks, I learned to exist without apology. Not as someone healing from heartbreak, but as someone rediscovering what it means to live without pretending. There were still hard days. Grief doesn't vanish, it lingers like a song you can't quite forget. But I no longer feared it. I made room for it beside joy, beside solitude, beside new beginnings I didn't have to name. And so, when I woke that morning to salt air drifting through the window and the cat curled warm beside me, I felt no ache, no longing, just presence. I didn't reach for my phone, didn't open the blinds right away. I just breathed. And for the first time in years, it wasn't about what I had lost, it was about what I had reclaimed.